Hey everybody, it's JJ Talks, and it's Thursday on the Breakfast Club, and today I'm going to be talking about language, of course. I'm always talking about language. Um, so this is actually inspired by a recent string of threads on Dev Shell's Facebook page. If you don't know who Dev Shell is, he was the founder of the original Breakfast Club, and I adore him and think he's a great guy. But I don't know why I said but. Yeah, there's no caveat there. So he's been posting about specifically language and sex and language and gender, and I mean biological sex, not like a sexual intercourse, and how language and terminology kind of really drastically affects the conversations around these issues. And I was like, yes, oh my god, there is finally people are recognizing this. You know, and I'm not saying that no one recognizes this ever, but I'm personally of the belief that language miscommunication contributes to pretty much like 90, maybe 85% of the disagreements that we have as humans. So, a lot of people think, this thought comes into my brain and I neatly packages it into these words and I deliver it to you and you interpret it exactly as I meant it. And that never happens. Ever. It literally can't, because our psychological makeups are so different, our brains are so different, that every word, every phrase has certain connotations or places that we've heard it that create this framework for which we view what this person has said to us. Even if we want to say that we're objective, we're never objective, because that's not how humans work. Sorry. So I think it's important, though, and I think it's really awesome that people in these arguments, especially, around gender and sex, are becoming self-aware of this. Because the first step to better communication and to more effective critical thinking and problem solving and, intergroup collaboration is to recognize that there's a discrepancy in your mental, lexical dictionary. And that's just a matter of fact, And a lot of people will say, well, why don't you just go by the dictionary definition? And on one hand, yeah, you could do that, but again, it still wouldn't work, because words are charged differently for different people. Language is not necessarily neutral. It's not flat and objective. It's dynamic, and it's tainted with history and, for example, traditional values. Traditional values we tend to think as anti-gay, right? Like, politicians will use traditional values. Sarge and I were talking about this the other day. And traditional values does not mean anti-gay. In the dictionary, the word traditional value, or the phrase traditional values, doesn't mean anti-gay. But in the context in which it's used and what it's been associated with in politics over the past several years, I generally assume that when someone says they're pro-traditional values, that they're pro-nuclear family and they're not supportive of gay marriage. And it's things like that. And there's 1,000 more, but I honestly just woke up. One of the big ones that I see perpetuate arguments is the definition of racism. To some people, racism means just discriminating or hating someone because of their skin color. That's a valid definition. To some people, racism refers to the system in place in our society that inherently caters to white people, or, our government that is primarily run by white people, or our corporations that are usually majorly run by white people. And that's what that definition is referring to. So if someone says to me, there's this whole argument, can you be racist against white people? If someone says to me, JJ, can you be racist against white people? I would say, okay, what definition of racism are you using? if you're using this definition, and you tell me, this is what racism means, I would say, yes, with that definition of racism, I would say you can be racist towards white people. You can definitely hate someone because of their skin color, if they're white, you know what I mean? And if you said this is the definition, then I would say no, because the system's not built to disadvantage me. And then, of course, some people disagree that the system's built to disadvantage minorities, and, that's a whole other conversation. But you've made it past this first barrier in this conversation. People get so heated up about this argument specifically. They'll be like, oh my god, they think you can't be racist against white people. Or, oh my god, they think you can be racist against white people. It's because the fucking definition of racism you're using is completely different. Okay? And if you were to lay that in the open and to just say, this is my definition of racism, and in this context, do you think that this is the case if we were using this definition? And it's so much easier to have a conversation. And I found that in most of my interpersonal conflicts, whether it be like having a political or a social argument with somebody, or having a fight with Sarge about who's doing the dishes, or, who's paying for food that day, this breakdown of language and this self-awareness of language always helps. It ridiculously helps. It puts everyone on the same page much more effectively than just screaming at each other and calling each other stupid or horrible for their opinions. And another thing that Dev said on his post was that, using a phrase like for the purpose of this conversation, this word means this. And Dev said that people didn't really like that or wouldn't agree on that, and I think that is a very good strategy actually to use. For the purpose of this conversation, the definition of this is this. It's so easy. It's so easy because what happens is that you two end up arguing about if you each have your own definition of this word, you both end up arguing like this. Like, you're not even arguing with each other, you're arguing in completely different levels and completely different, situations. And so then nothing gets done because you've hit this brick wall of what word means what. And if you can be self-aware and you could say, okay, yes, for the purpose of this conversation, this word means this, then you will be able to take the next step and actually have a productive conversation. And I wish more people would do that because it's so, so effective. I just think it's really important. I think it's so important, and people don't realize. I think a lot of people don't realize that that's what they're doing. That when they say racist or misogynist or homophobe or whatever, they mean something completely different than when someone else says those things. Now, I am not advocating for language prescription. I'm not advocating for the idea that, we need to come up with objective definitions for things, because language is always charged in some way. It's never going to be neutral. It's not. It's just, and I can make a whole linguistics video about why and give you 1,000 examples, but it's not. And so the most that we can do is know that. And when we have an argument with someone in which we're attempting to have a fruitful conversation, be self-aware of that and make your partner who you're arguing with aware of it too. And you guys will have a much more, polite, productive conversation. And it's just something to think about because it's important. And I am, inspired by the fact that people are recognizing this. So that's really all I had to say, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, or some of your experiences maybe where you've had an argument with someone and you've realized that you were talking about two completely different things, because it happens all the time. And I will see you guys next week. Bye!